The megaliths of Stonehenge are Britain's most investigated ancient monument. Yet despite centuries of scrutiny, excavations, and theories, the big questions remain. What were its origins? How did it evolve over thousands of years? And which forces of nature and humanity inspired its creators? Recently, at a site only 2 kilometers to the southeast, archaeologists have unearthed the first traces of people living in the same period.
Something incredible just turned up near Stonehenge, and honestly, it's shaking up everything we thought we knew. Archaeologists have uncovered a strange object buried beneath the ancient site, and what they found is nothing short of astonishing. This discovery could rewrite history as we know it, and experts are scrambling to figure out how it got there and what it means. So, let's get into it. In May 2002, while preparing the ground for a new housing development in Amesbury, Wiltshire, England, some archaeologists from Wessex Archaeology hit the jackpot. On May 3rd, right during their routine excavations, they stumbled upon a grave from around 2300 BC, smack dab in the early Bronze Age of Britain. And not just any grave, this one was just a stone's throw. Okay, 3 miles southeast of Stonehenge, and it belonged to a fellow who'd soon be dubbed the Amesbury Archer. The goodies unearthed in this burial were nothing short of a historian's dream. Around 100 items snuggling up next to the skeletal remains, including 3 copper knives, a couple of tiny gold hair tresses, 2 sandstone wrist guards, to keep the bowstring from snapping at the wrist, 16 flint arrowheads, and 5 pots linked to the beaker culture. Oh, and the gold ornaments? They turned out to be the earliest known use of gold in Britain, dating back to as early as 2470 BC. The man in the grave, our robust Amesbury Archer, was somewhere between 35 and 45 years old when he passed. His life seemed pretty tough though. He had an abscessed tooth and a serious knee injury that left him without his left kneecap. Imagine limping around with a painful bone infection. Ouch. His tooth enamel told an even broader story, hinting that he spent his early years somewhere in the Alpine region of Central Europe. Think modern-day Switzerland, Austria, or Germany. Now, this guy wasn't just any ancient traveler. The stash of grave goods suggested he was a VIP back in the day, perhaps one of Britain's earliest metalworkers. His know-how in metalworking, highlighted by items like a cushion stone, a handy portable anvil, underscores his burial's importance. While it's tempting to think he had a hand in building Stonehenge, given the fancy digs so close by, archaeologists like to keep us on our toes and remind us not to jump to conclusions without solid proof. As more digging went on, another younger man's grave popped up nearby, showing some family ties. This younger guy, aged between 20 and 25, shared a rare hereditary foot anomaly with the Archer and seemed to have grown up right around Stonehenge, unlike his older relative. This paints a fascinating picture of family links stretching between the local folks and those from the continent. Switching gears to a different kind of find, over in Lindo Moss, a peat bog near Wilmslow, Cheshire, England, peat extraction was the name of the game in the early 1980s. On a seemingly ordinary day, May 13th, 1983 to be exact, workers Andy Mould and Stephen Dooley were going about their peat shredding business when they stumbled upon what they initially thought was a bizarre peat ball. A closer look revealed it was actually a human head, which they soon learned belonged to a woman aged between 30 and 50, dating back about 2,000 years. This head-turning find was later dubbed Lindo Woman. Fast forward a little over a year to August 1st, 1984, and the scene is set for another eerie find. Andy Mould, possibly suspecting the bog had more secrets to spill, pulled what he assumed was a piece of wood off the conveyor belt. In a cheeky toss to his colleague Eddie Slack, the supposed log hit the ground, and as the peat crumbled away, a human foot was unveiled. Talk about a footloose discovery at the workplace. They knew they had something special and promptly rang up the local authorities. Enter Rick Turner, the Cheshire County archaeologist, who didn't waste a minute getting to the bog. He confirmed it was indeed a human body. With some skin exposed and starting to decay, Turner made a quick decision to cover the body back up with fresh peat, buying some time against the elements. By August 6th, a full-scale excavation was in motion, and they carefully unearthed what was soon to be known as Lindo Man, all while keeping him snug in his peat blanket. Now everyone loves a good mystery, and initially, there was talk that these remains might solve a recent missing persons case, but this body had other plans. Turns out, he was over 1,000 years old. Realizing this wasn't any ordinary John Doe, the local coroner handed him over for archaeological study. By August 21st, Lindo Man was off to the British Museum in London, where he was affectionately nicknamed Pete Marsh. This discovery really shook up the archaeological world, branding Lindo Man as one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 1980s. Now, let's wash off the bog mud and head over to the sandy shores of Happisburgh, Norfolk, England. In May 2013, while working on the Pathways to Ancient Britain project, they hit the jackpot on the beach at Happisburgh, Norfolk, England. You see, these folks weren't building sandcastles. They uncovered a series of ancient footprints preserved in sediment layers exposed by coastal erosion. How cool is that? These weren't just any footprints. They were nestled in a newly revealed layer of the Cromer Forest bed, peeking out from beneath the beach sand at low tide on Happisburgh's foreshore. Picture this: layers of history, laid down by an ancient river, now covered by beach sand, all preserved under a cliff that just gave away its secrets after a storm. These footprints, however, were fleeting treasures. Situated below the high tide mark, they were soft as whispers and at risk of being washed away. And indeed, within 2 weeks, the relentless tides had erased them. But not before our intrepid researchers, battling the whims of British weather, managed to capture 3D images of all the footprints using photogrammetry during low tides. A shout out to Isabel de Groot of Liverpool, John Moores University, who confirmed these impressions were genuinely hominin, our long-lost relatives walking the mudflats. About 50 footprints were recorded, sprawled over nearly 40 square meters. 12 were pretty much intact, and 2 even flaunted details of toes. They belonged to about 5 individuals, both adults and kids. Now, fast forward a few millennia to July 2009, and meet Terry Herbert, a metal detecting enthusiast from the Blockswitch Research and Metal Detecting Club. Armed with his trusty metal detector, Terry stumbled upon a glinting gold object. Little did he know, this would be the tip of the iceberg of the largest collection of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver artifacts ever found, now known as the Staffordshire Hoard. Over the exhilarating span of the next 5 days, Terry unearthed not 1, not 10, but 244 gold objects. Realizing he'd hit historical pay dirt, he quickly got on the horn with Duncan Slark, the finds liaison officer for the Portable Antiquities Scheme. The landowner, Fred Johnson, a good sport, agreed to an archaeological dig on his property. Funded by English Heritage and conducted by Birmingham Archaeology, the excavation team found that plowing had spread the artifacts over an area of 9 by 13 meters. When all was said and done, over 3,500 pieces were recovered, each more dazzling than the last. The hoard was mostly made up of military regalia, like sword pommel caps and helmet cheekpieces, suggesting they once belonged to some of the most elite warriors or even royalty. This discovery not only filled in some missing pieces about Anglo-Saxon England, especially the Kingdom of Mercia, but also cast a new light on the wealth and artistry of that era. It's a historian's jackpot that has since spurred countless research projects into Anglo-Saxon culture and history. Now, fast forward to 1903, in a different part of England, the picturesque Cheddar Gorge in Somerset. Here, workers were digging through Guff's Cave when they stumbled upon a nearly complete human skeleton. This wasn't just any old pile of bones. This was the Cheddar Man, believed to be about 10,000 years old, hailing from the Mesolithic period. The tale of Cheddar Man starts during what was supposed to be a routine drainage operation in the cave. They weren't looking for ancient relics, but there he was, an adult male who had seen his last days in his early 20s. The most intriguing part? His skull had this massive crater-like lesion above the right eye socket. Talk about a rough way to go. Whether it was a nasty infection or an injury, we can only guess. Fast forward to 1996, and Cheddar Man gets his moment in the scientific spotlight again. Brian Sykes of the University of Oxford manages to extract mitochondrial DNA from one of the old-timers' molars. It turns out that Cheddar Man was part of the haplogroup U5, which was typical of his era in Europe. And get this, about 10% of today's Europeans can trace their lineage right back to this group. But hold on to your hats, because there's more. A team led by Ian Barnes ramps up the intrigue in 2018 with a deep dive into Cheddar Man's genome, revealing that he probably had dark, maybe even black skin, coupled with dark curly hair and striking blue or green eyes. Oh, and he wasn't much for dairy. He had no lactose tolerance for it, a common trait among Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. His place in history isn't just about his looks or diet, though. The cave where he was discovered had a history of cannibalistic practices, or served as a site for secondary burials by earlier Paleolithic humans. Today, Cheddar Man's legacy lives on at the Natural History Museum in London, where his remains are preserved, and a replica stands proudly in the Cheddar Man and the Cannibals Museum. As we absorb the implications of this fascinating journey through our ancestral roots, we segue into another tale that bridges the ancient with the everyday. In March 1973, Vindolanda, a Roman fort near the frosty expanse of Hadrian's Wall, was bustling under the keen eyes of archaeologist Robin Burley. Imagine the chill of a northern England spring nipping at the heels of Burley's team as they dug through the earth, uncovering layers of history. Then, on the brisk morning of March 23rd, something extraordinary happened. Amid the usual clatter of shovels and brushes, a team member handed Burley what looked like just another piece of old wood. But wait, there were markings on it that caught the eye, a scribble that teased the possibility of a major find. With the enthusiasm of a detective on the verge of cracking a case, Burley peeled apart the wood's layers, revealing symbols that looked eerily like ancient hieroglyphics. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, he didn't hesitate to ring up his father, Professor Eric Burley, a titan in the field of archaeology himself. The advice was swift. Get more eyes on this, pronto. The next stop was a real race against time. Robin, along with his wife Patricia, zipped over to Durham University, cradling the fragile piece of history. However, by the time they got to expert Richard Wright, the markings had pulled a disappearing act, faded into near invisibility. Undeterred, Wright pointed them towards Alison Rutherford at Newcastle University. Using some nifty infrared photography, Rutherford brought the ghostly script back to life, confirming it as ancient Roman cursive writing. Now, not too far from the ancient whispers of Vindolanda, another historical figure has been looming large over the English countryside. On a November morning in 2012, Stuart Gullick and Michael Barker, two hobbyists armed with metal detectors, struck bronze in the rolling fields near the quaint village of Wiley. These intrepid members of the West London Archaeological Searchers were scanning a cultivated field when their devices buzzed with the telltale signs of metal below. Digging through the soil with care, they unearthed not gold coins or pirate booty, but something far older, the Wiley Hoard, a cache of 41 copper alloy artifacts dating back to the Middle Bronze Age, around 1400 to 1300 BC. Arranged in two clusters a few meters apart, the hoard revealed its secrets in stages. The first cluster was a neatly organized stash of torques, those elegant circular neck rings that might have graced the necks of Bronze Age VIPs. The second cluster? Not so tidy. It seemed that centuries of plowing had jumbled these pieces, perhaps frustrating past treasure seekers with its scattered appearance. Recognizing the significance of their discovery, Gullick and Barker didn't waste any time. They contacted David Dawson, the sharp-eyed director of the Wiltshire Museum, who was on site faster than you can say, archaeological jackpot. With such historical treasures at stake, the Wiltshire Archaeology Field Group swooped in just days later for a thorough excavation. They dug 3 test pits, but it seemed the duo had already scooped up all the bronze glory. No new treasures were added to the hoard from this dig. Perched on a hilltop with sweeping views of the River Wiley, the discovery site was a postcard-worthy scene of southern Wiltshire's chalk downs. It's a spot buzzing with prehistoric vibes, surrounded by ancient field systems and mysterious enclosures that whisper tales of yore. Just when you thought 2020 couldn't get any weirder, along comes Jim Irvine, Casually strolling through his dad's farmland in Rutland during the lockdown, Jim stumbled upon fragments of pottery that didn't exactly scream recent farming accident. No, these were old, really old. Curious, Jim looked closer, even checking out satellite images that hinted at structures buried right under the crop lines. Talk about X marking the spot. He quickly rang up the experts at Leicestershire County Council, who must have been thrilled to escape their own lockdown blues for some fresh air and a bit of digging. By August 2020, the University of Leicester Archaeological Services, along with Historic England and Rutland County Council, were all over it. They weren't disappointed. They unearthed a stunning Roman mosaic about the size of a decent London flat, depicting a dramatic scene from the Iliad, Achilles and Hector in a throwdown during the Trojan War. This was the first mosaic of its kind found in the UK, a real one-of-a-kind piece. The plot thickened as they dug up more than just a pretty floor. This mosaic was part of a grand villa, complete with barns, a bathhouse, and a sophisticated corridor layout that screamed Roman elite. And while Jim's accidental find is rewriting some of the dusty history books, halfway across the world in South Africa, archaeologists were also having their socks knocked off. With the help of some fancy laser technology called LiDAR, they pierced through dense vegetation to reveal the lost city of Queneng, lurking in the Suikerbosrand Hills near Johannesburg. This wasn't just a pile of old stones, but a bustling ancient city, now uncovered after centuries of playing hide-and-seek with history. Meanwhile, over in South Africa, archaeologists were cooking up their own slice of historical intrigue. In the early 21st century, a bunch of archaeologists in South Africa stumbled upon something huge. This tech wizardry started with Professor Karim Sadr from the University of the Witwatersrand getting curious with some satellite images on Google Earth back in 2012. What he saw was an ancient city that had way more to it than anyone thought, twice as many structures to be exact. Keen to see more than just the tops of trees, Sadr and his team called on LiDAR to cut through the canopy and map out what was hiding below. And what a reveal it was. The LiDAR data showed a sprawling metropolis spread over nearly 20 square kilometers, featuring about 800 homesteads. Picture this, a bustling city from as far back as the 15th century, thriving until the 19th century, with somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 Swana-speaking residents. They weren't just hanging about either. This place was complex with stone-walled family compounds, intricate passageways possibly buzzing with cattle, and huge enclosures that could corral up to 1,000 head, showcasing a level of wealth and social structure that's frankly impressive. This discovery didn't just map a city, it charted a whole narrative about pre-colonial Southern Africa, throwing a wrench in the old tales of an empty land waiting for European settlers in the 1830s. Now, speaking of remarkable finds, let's zip over to Peru. In November 2021, a team of quick-witted archaeologists from the National University of San Marcos hit the jackpot about 25 kilometers away from Lima, Peru. Under the leadership of Peter Van Dalen Luna, they uncovered a mummy that was not just any old set of bones, but an 800-year-old relic from before the Inca ruled the roost. Found cozied up in an underground tomb right at the bustling plaza center of Cajamarquilla, this mummy was wrapped up tightly with ropes and had its hands covering its face. Talk about going out with style! This wasn't just for kicks, though. It's a nod to a funerary tradition from southern Peru, hinting that even in death, there's a story to tell about beliefs in the afterlife. And guess what? The mummy wasn't chilling there alone. The site was packed with goodies like ceramics, stone tools, and even plant remains, each a clue into the daily lives and economic hustle of the region's ancient inhabitants. This treasure trove is a goldmine for understanding how Cajamarquilla connected coastal and highland communities as a thriving trade hub back in the day. Speaking of the site, Cajamarquilla is no small fry. Spanning a whopping 167 hectares, it's one of Peru's most significant archaeological sites. Imagine wandering through temple pyramids, exploring wide streets and ceremonial squares, or peeking into ancient cemeteries and grain silos. In 1960, Aubrey Barrett, an average engineer, was minding his own business, laying a water main near the village of Fishbourne in West Sussex, England. Little did he know, he was about to hit historical pay dirt. As Aubrey dug, he stumbled upon the foundations of a massive building north of the main road. Can you imagine just casually finding a piece of history? This discovery was so huge that the Sussex Archaeological Society got involved, kickstarting excavations in 1961 under the keen eye of archaeologist Barry Cunliffe. They quickly realized this was no ordinary find. Dubbed the Fishbourne Roman Palace, the site was a showstopper with dimensions that could rival Nero's Golden House in Rome or the Villa Romana del Casale in Sicily. Yeah, it was that grand. Spanning a formal courtyard garden of about 250 by 350 feet, the palace boasted about 50 mosaic floors, underfloor heating that would make any modern home envious, and even an integral bathhouse. The sophistication of Roman engineering right there in England. Further digs between 1995 and 1999 unearthed nearly 12,000 artifacts, pointing to human activity that dates back way before the Romans thought of crossing the Alps. They found flint tools from the Mesolithic period and the late Iron Age fragments. This place wasn't just a palace, but a historical gold mine showing life from thousands of years ago. Now, jumping over to another site that's just as mind-blowing, we land at Kalambo Falls, right on the border between Zambia and Tanzania. In 2019, Professor Larry Barham and his team from the University of Liverpool embarked on the Deep Roots of Humanity project, hoping to uncover some dirt on early human technology. What they found, though, would make any history buff's heart skip a beat. While moseying along the banks of the Kalambo River, something rather unusual caught their eye, a piece of wood just casually sticking out of a cliff face. On closer inspection, this wasn't just a random twig. Oh no, this was a 1.4 meter long log, tapered at the ends and featuring a deep notch resting atop another hefty log. These two were not just chilling there by accident, but interlocked, an intentional design by ancient hands. This find wasn't just old, but ancient, breaking records left and right in the archaeological world. Thanks to the soggy conditions at Kalambo Falls, which prevented the wood from decaying, this wooden relic had managed to survive the ravages of time. And how long had it been there? Luminescence dating of the surrounding sediment revealed an astonishing age of about 476,000 years. This predates Homo sapiens, hinting that it was likely the crafty work of Homo heidelbergensis. That's right. The same folks we often associate with simple stone tools were actually woodworking wizards. Professor Barham couldn't hide his excitement, proclaiming that this discovery was rewriting the book on the Stone Age. It turns out that our ancestors were more like primitive carpenters than simple stone chippers. Not too far from this tale of ancient ingenuity is another story steeped in mystery: the Westbury White Horse. Nestled into a chalk hillside near Westbury in Wiltshire, England, this large hill figure of a horse captivates the imagination. Its origins are as clouded as a British summer day, with theories flying about like confetti. Some say it was etched into the hill to celebrate King Alfred the Great's victory at the Battle of Athandon back in 878 AD. But there's not a shred of solid proof to back that up. And the first time anyone bothered to jot down something about it was centuries later, in the 18th century. In 1778, some folks decided the horse needed a bit of a makeover, perhaps sprucing up something older that time had forgotten. They flipped the script, or should I say the horse, since an engraving from just a few years earlier, in 1772, shows it is facing the other way. Talk about a facelift. They reshaped it and piled on more chalk to make sure it stood out. But, as with all great artworks, keeping it spick and span hasn't been a walk in the park. By 1873, it had gotten a bit pudgy and misshapen, prompting the formation of a committee dedicated to its restoration. They even bordered it with large stones to keep its figure. Fast forward to the 1950s, and there's the Westbury Urban District Council pouring concrete over it to cut down on upkeep. You can imagine how that went, graying over time until a cleanup in 1993 brought back its pearly white glow. What do you think about these discoveries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this discovery intriguing, Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more fascinating historical finds, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.